The human rebelled against the alien princess. Then she smiled. They were the flagships of the Celestial Dominion, a vast empire that had ruled hundreds of worlds for centuries. And now, they ruled Earth too. Humanity had survived barely under the shadow of these conquerors. No nation, no army, no leader had dared to rise against them until today. The city of New Boston was quiet. Soldiers in human uniforms stood in lines, their faces pale and tense. People lined the streets, watching from behind barriers. The event was public. The aliens wanted it to be seen. This was to be humanity's final surrender, the moment when Earth would kneel and acknowledge its place in the Dominion. On the largest stage, a figure stepped forward. She was unlike anything humanity had seen before. Princess Calith of the Dominion was tall, elegant, and frighteningly beautiful. Her skin shimmered with colors humans did not have words for, shifting subtly like liquid light. Her eyes glowed faintly, a soft violet that seemed to look not just at a person but through them, into their very thoughts. Her robe floated around her like smoke, and her presence carried authority that no human could ignore. The humans were expected to kneel. The Council of World Leaders, dressed in their ceremonial uniforms, looked nervous. Their hands shook as they held the ancient scrolls of surrender, papers they had hoped never to read aloud. Among them stood Elias Ward, a man in his mid-30s, tall, strong, and known for his courage. He had been a commander in the Resistance, a man who had spent years fighting in the shadows, teaching humans to survive. Today he was called to perform the most impossible task, kneel before a princess of the Dominion. Elias stepped forward. Every eye in the city, every camera in orbit was focused on him. The silence was deafening. The princess extended her hand, a gesture that demanded submission. The air was thick with expectation. Humans and aliens alike held their breath, waiting for the final words, the final act that would seal humanity's fate. And then Elias did something no one expected. He stopped. He did not kneel, he did not bow, he did not speak the words of surrender. He stood tall, his shoulders squared, and looked directly at Calith. "I will not kneel," he said. His voice was calm, steady, yet full of a fire that surprised even him. "Humanity will not surrender. We will not serve. We will not obey." A murmur ran through the human crowd. They had been trained to accept this moment, to show humility, to avoid death. And yet, here was a man defying not only the aliens but the laws of their own species. The alien soldiers stiffened. They had been programmed to expect obedience, not rebellion. In Dominion law, this act was punishable by death, immediate, public, absolute. The Council of World Leaders paled. Some whispered frantic orders, others stared as if in a dream. Princess Calith's face remained serene. She tilted her head slightly, studying Elias. The silence stretched. Humans imagined the weapons firing. They imagined the world ending in a flash of alien power. But then she did something even stranger. She smiled. It was not the cruel, sharp smile of a conqueror. It was not the cruel mockery humans had expected from someone of her status. It was subtle, almost gentle, yet full of a strange understanding. A smile that seemed to recognize the truth in Elias' words. The world froze. The broadcast that had been relaying the event across the galaxy cut abruptly, and rumors began to spread like wildfire. Why had she not killed him? Why had she smiled? Elias was quickly surrounded by alien guards. Hands raised, weapons aimed, the atmosphere tense as if the slightest sound could trigger violence. But Calith did not order his death. Instead, she gave a single command: take him alive. The soldiers hesitated. No human had ever defied a royal of the Dominion and lived. Some whispered to each other that the princess had lost her mind. Others, more careful, simply obeyed, though their eyes flicked nervously to her face, trying to find a hint of command. Elias was led away. He walked without resisting, though his mind raced. He understood only part of what had just happened. His actions had inspired the humans watching, but he had no idea why Caliph had spared him. The smile haunted him as much as it comforted him. There was power behind it, intelligence, something that humans could never fully understand. Later, in a secure chamber aboard one of the massive orbiting ships, Elias was interrogated. Not roughly, not cruelly, Caliph had her own ways. She was curious. Not just curious about rebellion, but about humans themselves. "Why did you defy me?" she asked, her voice soft but carrying a resonance that seemed to echo in the room. "Do you not fear death?" Elias met her gaze. "I do fear it," he said honestly, "but not enough to betray who I am. Humanity has survived countless threats. We survive because we fight, because we refuse to bow to fear. We do not kneel to conquerors." Caliph listened, her expression unreadable. In her long life she had encountered many species. Most had submitted immediately. Some had resisted briefly, only to be destroyed. Humans were different. She could feel it in the way Elias spoke, in the energy that radiated from him. They were not predictable. They were not controllable. And for the first time, Caliph wondered if the Empire had underestimated the species they believed so weak. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the story of the human who refused to kneel spread faster than fire. People who had been hiding in fear, people who had been waiting for someone to show courage, found themselves inspired. Small acts of defiance began in quiet corners. Factories refused alien orders, transport ships ignored commands, messages of resistance circulated secretly. The Dominion Council panicked. They demanded explanations, yet Caliph's actions, her choice to spare Elias, created confusion they could not control. Every human action, every whisper of rebellion carried more weight because of her smile. It was as if she had given them permission to hope. Caliph herself was careful. She did not openly encourage the rebellion. She was still a princess of the Dominion, bound by duty and law, but she allowed information to leak. She allowed humans to discover weaknesses in Dominion technology, to learn tactics from other conquered worlds, to see the cracks in the Empire's armor. Elias, meanwhile, was learning about her. They spoke often, though never as friends. He noticed the faint glow in her eyes when she listened to him speak about human history. She asked questions about their battles, their strategies, their culture. Every answer she received seemed to intrigue her more. "I do not understand why you are so determined," she said one day. "You could save yourself, you could serve and live. Why risk everything?" Elias smiled faintly. "Because survival without freedom is not life. Humanity may survive, but if we bow to those who would control us, we die inside. You can take our cities, our weapons, our people, but you cannot take our will. That is ours alone." Caliph considered this. She had studied countless species, but few had spoken with such clarity and certainty. She began to realize that the Dominion had relied too much on fear. They had never truly studied humans. They had assumed obedience, assumed weakness. Elias proved them wrong in the most public, undeniable way. Days passed. Humans continued to resist in small but meaningful ways. Dominion forces grew frustrated. Aliens who had never seen such defiance began to question their orders. And all the while, Caliph watched, learning, thinking, weighing. The smile never left her face when she thought of Elias' courage, not out of amusement but recognition. The rebellion was small now, almost invisible, but it had begun. And it had begun because one man had refused to kneel. Elias understood only part of the truth. Caliph's smile, the one that had startled the world, was more than curiosity. It was acknowledgement. Recognition of something she had long suspected but never allowed herself to admit. Humans were not a species to be ruled by fear. They were unpredictable, adaptable, and resilient. They were dangerous in ways the Dominion could never calculate. The first sparks of hope began to ignite across the planet. Soldiers whispered among themselves about what Elias had done. Civilians looked at one another, uncertain but daring to imagine a world where they were no longer slaves. Even as Dominion ships orbited the Earth like silent watchers, humans began to see the possibility of change. And somewhere among the stars, Princess Calith continued to smile. She did not smile because she had spared a human. She smiled because she recognized a species capable of challenging the galaxy itself. The rebellion had begun, and for the first time in centuries, humanity had a chance. The air on the Dominion ship was quiet, almost too quiet. Elias Ward sat in the center of a large chamber, his hands bound lightly, not with cruelty, but to remind him he was a guest under supervision. Princess Calith stood near the window, her gaze fixed on Earth below. From orbit the planet looked small, almost fragile, and yet Elias could feel the strength of its people in the veins of the cities, the stubborn pulse of life that refused to bow. "You know," Calith said finally, her voice soft, "you are not like the others. Most species would have knelt, most would have begged, most would have accepted death quietly." Elias did not look at her. He looked at the floor, steady and calm. "Most species are not human," he replied. "We do not surrender. We do not follow unless we choose to." She turned to face him, her violet eyes glowing faintly. "And yet your choice will cost you everything. Your people, your freedom, your life, everything." He shrugged lightly. "If the choice is between freedom and life, I choose freedom every time." Calith studied him. The Dominion had trained her to understand strategy, politics, and diplomacy. They had trained her to see threats and opportunities in clear, cold lines. Yet Elias was not a simple line. He was chaos wrapped in calm. He was fire beneath ice. And for reasons she could not yet explain, she found herself drawn to it. Days passed, and Calith kept Elias alive. She ordered that he be treated well, fed, rested, even allowed to stretch and move within the chambers. She said it was for study, to learn how humans survived. The truth, however, was more complicated. She wanted to see how far he would go, how much he would reveal, and whether humans could truly be more than the Dominion assumed. During their conversations, Elias spoke not only of resistance but of human history. He described ancient wars, empires that rose and fell, civilizations that survived natural disasters and internal betrayals. Humans, he explained, survived not because they were strongest or smartest, but because they adapted. They endured. They learned. They fought. Calith listened, fascinated. She had studied thousands of species, but humans were different. They were unpredictable, chaotic, yet unified in ways that were hard to calculate. She realized that her empire had misunderstood them entirely. The Dominion saw obedience as proof of intelligence. They saw rebellion as proof of weakness. And yet, Elias' words suggested the opposite. "You speak as if survival is enough," she said one evening, her tone calm but probing. "But if the Dominion crushed your cities, your armies, your people, what then? Would you still resist?" He met her gaze. "Yes, because resistance is not only about winning. It is about refusing to be ruled. You can destroy everything we have, but you cannot destroy our will. That is ours alone." She was silent for a long moment. His words, simple yet profound, echoed in her mind. She realized that humans did not need her mercy. They needed opportunity. The opportunity to fight, to resist, to prove themselves. And she had the power to give it. Meanwhile, on Earth, small acts of defiance began to ripple through human society. Factories refused to operate under Dominion orders. Transportation networks ignored commands. Communications networks that had once been monitored became channels for secret messages, plans, and codes. Citizens whispered in alleys, in basements, and on rooftops. The rebellion was quiet at first, almost invisible, but it grew steadily, like a fire consuming dry brush. The Dominion Council grew anxious. Reports of human defiance reached them daily, yet Calith continued to protect Elias. They did not understand her motivations. Some whispered that she had lost control, while others suspected political manipulation. Calith did not answer. She had no need to justify her actions. She knew that humanity's potential was real, and she was determined to see it realized. In private moments, Caliph asked Elias questions, not as a ruler questioning a prisoner, but as a student learning from a teacher. "Why do your people continue to fight when the odds are so small?" she asked one day. "You are weak compared to the Dominion, you know that." Elias smiled faintly. "Weak, maybe, but strength is not just about power. It is about persistence, creativity, and courage. Humans survive because we refuse to give up, even when everything is against us. You cannot measure our strength with your weapons or your fleets. You can only see it when we decide to act." She considered his words carefully. There was truth in them, undeniable and clear. Caliph realized that the Dominion's greatest mistake had not been underestimating humans. It had been underestimating their ability to inspire one another. Every act of defiance, no matter how small, gave others courage. Every refusal to obey became a spark, and sparks could become fire. Elia's presence became a symbol. On Earth, humans whispered about him. He was the one who had refused to kneel, the one who had stared death in the face and chosen defiance. Even those who had never seen him now knew his name. He was no longer just a commander. He was a symbol of human resilience. Caliph observed these developments with growing fascination. She began to see that the rebellion did not need her guidance to survive. Humans were capable of more than she had imagined. They were creative, resourceful, and relentless. They did not wait for orders. They did not need permission. One day, Elias asked a question that surprised her. "Why did you spare me?" Caliph looked at him, and for a moment the calm, controlled exterior slipped. "Because I wanted to see, I wanted to understand. Humans are said to be weak, yet here you are, defying me without hesitation. I wanted to know why." He nodded slowly. "Then you understand now." She smiled faintly. "I understand more than I should. You are remarkable, more than I expected." Elias leaned back, unconsciously relaxed. "Humans are like that. We adapt, we fight, we endure, we survive. And sometimes we inspire others to do the same." The days turned into weeks. Caliph allowed Elias small freedoms within the ship. He walked the corridors, observed alien technology, even spoke with other humans who had been captured. She watched as he taught them subtle tactics, ways to hide, ways to communicate. Humans learned quickly. Their minds were flexible, capable of understanding systems they had never encountered before. The rebellion grew bolder. Resistance cells began attacking Dominion supply lines. Communications between human colonies became more coordinated. Dominion forces, trained to expect fear and submission, were caught off guard. They attempted to suppress the rebellion with force, but humans had already learned to use the Dominion's own systems against them. Caliph watched from orbit, her mind racing. She began to realize that the Empire had been wrong in every assumption. Humans were not weak. Humans were not predictable. Humans were dangerous, not because they were violent, but because they were determined, clever, and willing to endure unimaginable risk for the sake of freedom. She began to make choices that would have shocked the Dominion Council. She allowed supplies to reach rebel factions. She provided information that humans could use to improve their defenses. She subtly undermined the Dominion's own authority without making her actions obvious. Elias noticed the changes, but he did not fully understand her motives. "You are helping us," he said one day, "but why? You are a princess. Your people will punish you for this." Caliph looked at him, her violet eyes reflecting the planet below. "Because I see the truth," she said softly. "And the truth is, humans are not meant to be ruled. They are meant to challenge, to survive, to grow. I cannot watch them be destroyed for what they are." Elias studied her face. For the first time he realized that her smile, the one that had startled the world, was not amusement. It was recognition, understanding, perhaps even respect. The rebellion's actions became more visible. Skirmishes erupted across the planet, and reports of human victories, however small, reached orbit. Dominion officers were bewildered. Humans were winning, not through sheer firepower, but through ingenuity and resilience. Caliph observed quietly, never intervening directly, yet always ensuring that Elias and the humans had what they needed to continue. The smile never left her face when she thought of him. It was not joy, nor amusement, nor mockery. It was acknowledgement of a truth the Dominion had long refused to see. Humanity was alive, fierce, and unstoppable. In one quiet moment, as Earth spun slowly beneath the ships, Elias spoke again. "We do not need you to save us," he said. "We need the chance to fight." Caliph nodded slowly. "And that is what I am giving you," she said. "Not as a ruler, but as someone who understands. The galaxy has underestimated you for too long. It is time they see the truth." For the first time, Elias allowed himself a small smile. "Then the fight begins." Calith's smile deepened, though her expression remained calm. She had done what no one else dared. She had trusted a human. And in that trust, she had discovered a species that could change the course of the galaxy. The rebellion was no longer small, quiet, or hidden. It was growing, spreading, inspiring, and unstoppable. And somewhere in the stars, Princess Caliph continued to watch, her smile a silent promise that humanity's defiance had been recognized, respected, and perhaps even understood. The spark she had seen in Elias was now becoming a flame across the planet. And soon, the Dominion would realize that they had not conquered a weak species. They had awakened a force they could not control, a species that would refuse to bow again. And when they came to challenge it, they would find that humans were ready. Because humanity did not just survive. Humanity resisted. Humanity endured. And with the smile of an alien princess as their witness, their time had come. The Dominion believed that humans were easy to control. They had assumed that obedience could be forced, that fear would work where logic failed. But the events of the last weeks had proven them wrong. Humanity was not just surviving. They were adapting, growing stronger with every challenge. Elias Ward walked through the ruined streets of New Boston, now a hub of resistance. Buildings that had once housed Dominion offices and military centers were now filled with human engineers, strategists, and fighters. Everywhere he looked, there were signs of ingenuity. Machines captured from the Dominion were repurposed for defense. Ships that had once carried alien soldiers were now piloted by humans who had learned to navigate them with skill and precision. Caliph stood at the edge of the city, observing from a high vantage point. Her presence was unusual. No human had ever seen her in the open like this. She had come to witness humanity firsthand, to see what they could do when given freedom to act. She did not disguise her alien form. She did not hide her glowing eyes or the shimmering colors of her skin. Humans stared, some in awe, some in fear, but none could deny her presence. "You should not be here," Elias said softly, walking beside her. "The Dominion will not forgive this." Caliph tilted her head. "Let them come," she said. "They are used to obedience. They are not prepared for humans who fight with intelligence, courage, and heart." The first Dominion fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's atmosphere. Massive ships darkened the sky, weapons charged, ready to destroy anyone who dared resist. But the humans were ready. They had learned, adapted, and coordinated. They did not meet the invaders with fear. They met them with strategy. Elias commanded the defense. Small squadrons of human pilots used captured Dominion ships to outmaneuver the enemy. Ground forces sabotaged weapons systems, disrupted communications, and set traps that the Dominion had never expected. Every engagement taught the humans something new. Every victory, no matter how small, built confidence. Caliph watched silently. She had seen countless species crushed under the Dominion's power. She had watched worlds fall, entire populations erased because they lacked the ability or will to resist. But humans were different. They were unpredictable, and that unpredictability was a weapon. On the ground, Elias moved with precision, coordinating attacks and defenses simultaneously. He was everywhere at once, a symbol of leadership that inspired those around him. His calm demeanor in the face of chaos gave humans confidence. They were not fighting blindly. They were fighting intelligently, creatively, and relentlessly. The Dominion was shocked. Their sensors could not calculate human ingenuity. Their fleets, powerful as they were, struggled against a species that learned faster than they could predict. The humans were not just defending. They were innovating, turning the Empire's own technology against it. Kalith joined Elias in the command center, overlooking the city and the battlefield beyond. "You are extraordinary," she said. "I did not expect this level of coordination, of understanding, of resilience." Elias looked at her, not with arrogance but with quiet determination. "We are human," he said. "We survive, we adapt, we endure, and we fight." The battles escalated. The Dominion launched a massive assault, determined to crush humanity before the rebellion could spread further. Entire fleets descended on Earth, dropping soldiers and machines to subdue cities. But the humans were ready. They had learned from every skirmish. They anticipated attacks, set countermeasures, and used the environment to their advantage. Kalith took a bold step. She openly defied her own council, sending messages to the Dominion forces ordering them to hold back, giving humanity space to fight and survive. She risked everything, knowing that her own people would consider her a traitor. But she did not hesitate. She had seen the truth in Elias' words and in the actions of humans. They were not to be ruled, they were to be respected. The council in the Dominion capital was furious. Kalith's communications were intercepted, her orders scrutinized, her loyalty questioned. They sent assassins, command ships, and elite soldiers to bring her back under control. But she was already one step ahead. Humans guided her escape, and she moved with speed and precision that left the Dominion chasing shadows. As she moved among the human forces, Kalith began to understand them in ways she never could have from orbit. She saw their resilience, their willingness to endure injury and loss without giving in. She saw scientists working tirelessly to repair and improve weapons and ships. She saw civilians stepping up to support the fighters, creating networks of food, medicine, and intelligence. Humanity was not just surviving, it was thriving under pressure. One evening, as the sun set over a city scarred by battle, Kalith and Elias stood on a rooftop, watching the horizon. Fires burned in the distance, but the humans were not defeated. They were rebuilding even as they fought. "You could leave," Elias said. "Return to the Dominion. You would be safe." Kalith shook her head. "I cannot. I have seen the truth. I have seen what humans can do. I cannot abandon this." Elias nodded, understanding the depth of her commitment. "Then you are human enough to fight with us," he said. "Even if you are not one of us, you are with us now." The days turned into weeks. Battles raged across Earth, each more intense than the last. The humans had learned to coordinate multiple fronts, striking where the Dominion least expected. Their ingenuity became legendary. Traps, ambushes, and counterattacks turned the tide repeatedly. Dominion soldiers began to whisper among themselves, fear replacing the confidence they had once felt. The humans were not just resisting, they were teaching the galaxy that fear could be defeated. Kalith played her part carefully. She offered intelligence, medical support, and strategic advice, but she never led the humans directly. Her presence was enough to boost morale. She had seen countless worlds fall because the oppressed lacked guidance, and she refused to let that happen here. In one daring operation, humans captured a Dominion command ship. It was a symbolic victory, but more importantly, it provided critical intelligence. Humans studied the ship systems, learned its weaknesses, and used the knowledge to strengthen their defenses. Every victory, however small, became a lesson, and every lesson made them stronger. Elias moved among the soldiers, giving orders, inspiring confidence, and teaching tactics. Kalith observed, quietly learning from him. She began to understand that leadership was not about fear or power. It was about trust, courage, and the willingness to endure hardship for the sake of others. The Dominion escalated further, sending fleets of destruction to overwhelm the humans. They underestimated the coordination and adaptability of the people below. Each fleet met resistance, each strike met counterstrike, and each victory for the humans inspired even more courage. Caliph saw the change in the humans. They were no longer afraid. They were no longer obedient. They were united not by command but by choice. Each human fought not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to fight. Their determination was contagious. Even those who had once doubted themselves found strength in the defiance of their leaders and peers. The Dominion realized too late that they had miscalculated. Humans were not just resilient. They were unstoppable in ways that machines and fleets could not predict. They fought with creativity, courage, and unity. They learned from every failure and adapted. They refused to bow. Caliph watched Elias as he rallied his people. She understood now what she had glimpsed when he first refused to kneel. Humanity's strength was not in numbers or weapons. It was in spirit, in will, in determination. They were dangerous because they refused to be conquered, and they were unstoppable because they never gave up. As night fell over the city, humans celebrated small victories and mourned losses, but they never gave in to despair. They repaired, they learned, and they fought again. Caliph smiled faintly, her violet eyes reflecting the fires below. She had never expected humans to be this remarkable. They were not weak as the Dominion believed. They were strong, adaptable, and relentless. Elias turned to her. "They are learning fast," he said. "Faster than I imagined." Caliph nodded. "And they will keep learning. Every mistake, every victory, every loss, it all shapes them. They are becoming stronger than you can imagine." The rebellion was no longer a small spark. It had grown into a force that the Dominion could no longer ignore. The humans had proven that survival was not enough. They demanded freedom, respect, and the right to determine their own future. And as Caliph stood beside Elias, watching humanity rise against impossible odds, she realized that the Empire had made its greatest mistake, underestimating a species that refused to kneel, refused to obey, and refused to surrender. The galaxy had expected humans to be weak. They had expected fear to control them. They had expected submission. They were wrong. Humans were alive, fierce, and unstoppable. And with Caliph by their side, not as a conqueror but as a witness and ally, the rebellion would not just survive, it would thrive. The Dominion had misjudged the humans, and they would soon pay the price. For Elias and his people, the fight had only just begun. But the fires of resistance burned brighter than ever. The galaxy would learn, eventually, that humans did not bow. Humans did not kneel. Humans did not surrender. And the alien princess who had once smiled at defiance would stand beside them as the world watched in awe and fear. Because humanity had chosen to fight. And they would not stop. The galaxy was watching. After weeks of skirmishes, sabotage, and rebellion, humanity had proven that it would not bow to the celestial dominion. Small victories had turned into larger campaigns, and the empire had begun to fracture under the pressure of its own misjudgment. Worlds that had once been loyal to the Dominion began questioning their place, inspired by the defiance of Earth. On the ground, Elias Ward moved among the people like a shadow and a beacon at once. He oversaw operations, coordinated defenses, and inspired courage in every corner. The humans were no longer afraid, no longer hesitant. They fought not just to survive, but to claim their future. Every day brought new victories, new adaptations, and new hope. Caliph walked beside him, her presence no longer hidden. She moved freely among the humans, offering advice, intelligence, and guidance, though never commanding. Her status as a princess of the Dominion gave her words weight. Soldiers, engineers, and citizens listened, not because they had to, but because they trusted her understanding. She had seen humanity in action, and she had chosen to stand with them. Reports came in from all over Earth. Dominion supply lines were disrupted, communication networks sabotaged, and key bases overrun. Entire fleets had been captured, and the humans were turning enemy technology against its former masters. Each success was a lesson, each victory a warning to the Empire that they had underestimated the species they believed so weak. The Dominion Council could no longer ignore the threat. They sent their elite forces, the ones trained to suppress rebellion before it could spread, to Earth in full. Their ships blotted out the stars, massive engines burning brightly, weapons primed for destruction. But the humans were ready. They had learned from every previous encounter. They did not simply defend, they counterattacked, striking where the Dominion least expected. Elias stood on a ridge overlooking a battlefield where fire and metal clashed. Human and Dominion forces collided in waves, but the humans adapted with every strike. They used captured technology to create traps, ambushes, and diversions. They coordinated their attacks with intelligence that no fleet of the Dominion had predicted. Every move was calculated, yet unpredictable, exactly as Elias had taught them. Kalith observed from above, her eyes glowing faintly as she watched the humans in action. She had seen countless species defeated by the Dominion, yet humans were unlike any she had encountered. They were creative, resourceful, and relentless. They were dangerous not because of sheer strength, but because of their will, and they fought with a determination that inspired everyone around them. In one daring maneuver, humans led a small fleet through a narrow asteroid field to strike a Dominion command station. The alien commanders had assumed no one could navigate such treacherous terrain, yet humans moved like shadows, evading sensors, striking with precision and disappearing before retaliation could arrive. The Dominion fleet was caught off guard. Several ships were destroyed and the command station was disabled, cutting communication lines across the sector. "Impressive," Kalith said softly to Elias as they watched the operation unfold. "Your species is remarkable. I have never seen anything like it." Elias nodded. "We survive because we must. We fight because we cannot do otherwise. Giving up is not in our nature." The rebellion had become more than a defense. It was a movement. Other alien species, long oppressed by the Dominion, began to take notice. Some sent aid secretly, while others openly joined the human forces. The Dominion's reputation as an unchallengeable empire began to crumble. Doubt spread among their ranks. The humans had shown that fear could be defied, that obedience was not universal, and that rebellion could succeed. Kalith knew the final battle was approaching. The Dominion would not allow Earth's defiance to continue indefinitely. They would send everything they had. And yet she had faith in the humans she had come to admire. Their resilience, adaptability, and courage had already changed the course of history. Elias gathered his commanders. Maps, plans, and strategies covered every surface. "This is it," he said. "The Dominion will throw everything at us. We will face overwhelming force, but we are ready. We have learned, adapted, and survived before. We will do it again. Remember, we fight not just for survival, but for freedom. Every life, every city, every person matters. And we will not surrender." The human forces moved with purpose. Cities became fortresses, skies became battlegrounds, and every human, soldier, scientist, civilian, took part in the defense. Kalith guided them subtly, offering insights that turned potential disasters into victories. She no longer feared the Dominion's reaction. She had committed herself fully to the humans' cause. The first wave of the Dominion's final assault hit with terrifying force. Ships descended from orbit, their weapons firing in precise volleys, flattening structures and sending shockwaves across the cities. But humans responded with equal precision. Ambushes disabled weapons, electronic warfare disrupted targeting systems, and squads of fighters struck from unexpected angles. The Dominion had expected fear and submission. They found none. Elias moved among his people, giving orders and encouragement. "Do not falter," he shouted. "Every step we take, every action we make is for our future. We fight together, we survive together." The battle raged for hours, then days. Dominion commanders were forced to adapt to tactics they had never encountered. Each human maneuver seemed impossible, yet effective. Engineers repaired damage rapidly. Scientists modified weapons and ships in real time. Civilians carried supplies and messages across dangerous zones. Humanity was not merely defending, it was evolving under fire. Kalith watched with pride. She had seen many species fall, many civilizations crushed, yet humanity thrived in chaos. They were alive, and their strength was not measured in technology alone, but in their will to endure, to fight, and to survive. In the midst of battle, a Dominion flagship attempted a direct strike on New Boston. Elias led a daring counterattack, using captured enemy ships and clever tactics to intercept it. The humans outmaneuvered the fleet, disabling its weapons and forcing it to retreat. The victory was celebrated immediately, not just for the tactical advantage, but for what it represented. Humans could defeat the supposedly invincible. Kalith approached Elias as the city celebrated. "You have done the impossible," she said. "You and your people have shown the galaxy that the Dominion can be challenged." Elias smiled, weary but determined. "We are not done yet. This is only the beginning. The Dominion still has power, but we will continue to fight, and we will not bow." The final moments of the rebellion unfolded as Dominion control collapsed. News of human victories spread across the galaxy. Planets that had once followed the Dominion's orders began withdrawing their allegiance. Others openly joined the humans, seeing them as a symbol of hope and defiance. The Empire fractured, unable to maintain control over its widespread territories. Kalith played a key role in exposing the Dominion's history. She released archives and records that revealed manipulation, lies, and oppression across countless worlds. The truth shattered the fear that had maintained the Empire's dominance. Alien species began questioning their rulers, demanding freedom and supporting the humans. Elias stood beside Kalith as the Dominion fleet retreated. Humanity had won, not through sheer force, but through strategy, courage, and unity. They had survived against impossible odds and had proven that no empire, no matter how powerful, could suppress their will. For the first time in centuries, humanity was free. Cities rebuilt, networks reconnected, and people celebrated survival and victory. Yet even in celebration, Elias knew that the galaxy would not be silent. Humans would be tested again, challenged by those who feared or envied their resilience. But now they were ready. They had fought together, learned together, and survived together. Kalith looked at the humans around her. She had once ruled in a galaxy where fear kept order. She had once believed obedience was the measure of strength. Now she understood that true strength came from defiance, courage, and the refusal to surrender. "You have changed the galaxy," she said softly to Elias. "Your people, your courage, everything you have done has made others see what humanity truly is." Elias nodded. "We did not do it alone. People like you helped us see that we could fight, that we could survive, that we could win. But it was humanity that refused to bow. It was humanity that endured." Kalith smiled, the same gentle, knowing smile that had startled the world when Elias first refused to kneel. That smile now held understanding, respect, and acknowledgement. Humans were not just survivors. They were challengers, innovators, and conquerors of impossible odds. In the aftermath, the galaxy took notice. Humanity was no longer a managed species. Humans were free, respected, and feared in equal measure. Stories of the rebellion spread from planet to planet, inspiring oppressed species everywhere. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would not forget. Humans do not bow, humans do not kneel, and humans will fight for their freedom. Elias and Kalith stood together, watching the horizon as the sun rose over a world scarred but alive. The rebellion had ended, but a new era had begun. Humans had proven their worth, not to the Dominion, not to the galaxy, but to themselves. They had survived, resisted, and triumphed. And somewhere deep within her, Caliph understood that the Empire had misjudged them from the beginning. Humans were not weak. They were not obedient. They were unpredictable, unstoppable, and brilliant in ways no one had anticipated. The alien princess who had smiled at defiance now stood witness to history. She had seen a species rise against impossible odds, and she had chosen to stand with them. Her smile, once a mystery, now spoke of admiration, respect, and the quiet acknowledgement of greatness. The galaxy had been changed forever. Humanity had risen. The Dominion had fallen. And the story of the human who refused to kneel, the humans who fought together, and the alien princess who smiled at defiance would be remembered for generations. Because in the end, humanity had done more than survive. They had inspired, challenged, and conquered in their own way, and the universe would never underestimate them again. The human rebelled against the alien princess. Then she smiled.